The smirk on my sister's face vanished instantly. 7 figures? From selling candles online? Her champagne glass froze midway to her lips as silence fell over the mahogany dining table. My parents stared at me, completely stunned. Just minutes. Earlier, they'd been laughing at my cute little hobby business. Now, they couldn't even speak. Sometimes the best revenge isn't planned. It's simply the truth finally coming to light. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I still remember the exact moment I decided to stop hiding my success. The crystal chandelier light bounced off the polished silverware as my sister Claire raised her glass, her diamond bracelet catching the light, a gift from our parents for her recent promotion to senior account manager. To moving up in the world, she toasted, her eyes flickering to me with that familiar look of pity and superiority that had followed me since childhood. My name is Rebecca Walsh, though everyone calls me Becca. At 34, I was the family disappointment, or so they thought. The artistic one who never reached her potential. The dreamer who started a little candle business from her garage instead of pursuing a real career like my sister's prestigious position at Winston & Reed Marketing Agency. And how's your what is it again? Etsy shop doing? Claire asked, cutting into her perfectly seared steak. Her voice carried that unmistakable tone, the one that could make any accomplishment sound like a child's finger painting proudly displayed on a refrigerator. I'd been dreading this dinner for weeks. My mother's invitation had come unexpectedly after nearly 8 months of minimal contact. "We're having a special family dinner next Saturday," she'd said. "Claire has exciting news." Of course she did. Claire always had exciting news, and I was always expected to attend and applaud appropriately. My relationship with my family hadn't always been strained. Growing up in Oak Ridge, a quaint suburb outside of Portland, I'd been a bright, creative child, always drawing, crafting, and experimenting with colors and scents. My parents, Eleanor and Richard Walsh, had encouraged this creativity until it became clear it wasn't just a phase. "Art doesn't pay the bills," my father would say whenever I mentioned pursuing design in college. "Look at Claire. She's practical." Claire, 2 years my senior, had dutifully followed our parents' expectations, majoring in business, joining the right clubs, networking with the right people. She was the blueprint for success in their eyes. I was the rough draft that needed constant revision. Despite their pressure, I'd pursued my passion, earning a degree in fine arts and design, much to their disappointment. When I graduated and struggled to find traditional employment, their concerns seemed validated. "You should have listened," became my mother's refrain during our increasingly uncomfortable phone calls. What they didn't understand, what I'd deliberately kept from them, was that my struggling period had been brief, very brief. "It's doing fine," I answered Claire, taking a small sip of water. The truth was, Luminous Craft, my supposedly little candle business, had surpassed $3 million in revenue last year, but I'd never told them. Not when I moved from my garage to a 5,000-square-foot production facility. Not when my candles were featured in Vogue and GQ. Not when celebrities started posting about my custom scent collections on Instagram. Not even when I bought my modern glass and cedar home overlooking the Columbia River. "Fine? Just fine?" Claire pressed, eyebrows raised. "Can you even make rent doing that?" I noticed my mother and father exchange glances, that familiar look of worry and disappointment they'd perfected over the years. My father cleared his throat. "Becca, No, Winston & Reed is always hiring in their creative department. Claire could put in a good word." He smiled, his expression a mixture of concern and condescension. "It's never too late to start building a real career." There it was again. Real career. As if creating something from nothing, building a brand from scratch, and employing 15 people wasn't real. As if the 60-hour weeks I'd put in developing unique scent combinations, perfecting burn times, sourcing sustainable materials, and building an e-commerce platform were somehow less legitimate than Claire's corporate job. "I'm doing okay, Dad. Don't worry about me," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. This dance was familiar. They'd express concern, offer unwanted help, I'd deflect, and we'd move on to praising Claire's latest achievement. It had been our family, dynamic for so long that we all played our parts without thinking. Mom turned to Claire, her face brightening. "Tell Becca your news, honey." Claire sat up straighter, her perfectly manicured hand reaching for her glass again. "Well," she began, unable to suppress her smile. "Winston and Reed has put me in charge of the Parker Hotel's account. It's their biggest client, worth over $20 million annually." She paused for effect. "And they're giving me a corner office on the executive floor." "That's wonderful, sweetie." Mom beamed, reaching over to squeeze Claire's hand. "We're so proud of you." "Excellent work," Dad added, nodding approvingly. "This calls for something special." He stood and walked to the wine cabinet, returning with a bottle of champagne, the expensive kind they saved for real celebrations. "We've been saving this for a special occasion." As he popped the cork and filled 4 flutes, I noticed Claire watching me, waiting for my reaction. I smiled genuinely. Despite our complicated relationship, I didn't begrudge her success. "Congratulations, Claire. That's a big responsibility." "Thank you," she replied, seemingly satisfied with my acknowledgement. "It's a lot of pressure, but that's what happens when you work your way up in a real business." There it was again, that subtle dig. "You know," my mother added, passing me a champagne flute, "Parker Hotels has the most beautiful candles in their lobbies." "What are they called, Claire?" "Lumiere," Claire answered. "They're French, very exclusive, hand-poured in Provence or something. Probably cost a fortune." I nearly choked on my champagne. Lumiere was actually my biggest competitor, and while they marketed themselves as French, they manufactured in New Jersey. Their scent profiles were good, but their burn time was inconsistent. I'd analyzed all their products extensively while developing my luxury line. "Oh, Becca, you should see if they'd carry your candles," my mother suggested, her tone making it clear she thought this was as likely as me walking on the moon. "Wouldn't that be something?" Claire snorted lightly. "Mom, Parker is a luxury hotel chain. They're not going to stock candles someone makes in their garage." I bit my tongue, taking another sip of champagne instead of responding. Parker Hotels had actually approached me 3 months ago. We were in final negotiations for a custom line to be featured in all their North American properties. The deal would add another $8 million to my annual revenue. "So, Becca," my father interjected, clearly trying to be kind, "what exactly do you do all day with this candle thing? Is it still just a side business while you look for a proper job?" I set my glass down, carefully composing my response. For years, I'd downplayed my success around my family. At first, it was because my business was truly small and I didn't want to hear their concerns or suggestions. Then, as Luminous Craft grew, I kept quiet out of a strange mix of pride and spite. I wanted to succeed completely on my own terms, without their input or approval. And perhaps deep down, I was waiting for this moment, when their underestimation would be revealed for what it was. "Actually," I began, my voice steadier than I expected, "it keeps me pretty busy. I have employees now." Claire's eyebrows shot up. "Employees? Plural? Like more than one person helping you pour wax?" 15 full-time staff, actually, I replied, watching their expressions shift, plus seasonal contractors during the holiday rush. There was a moment of confused silence before my mother spoke. 15 people? Making candles? That can't possibly be profitable. I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment I'd been both avoiding and anticipating for years. Actually, Mom, it's very profitable. Luminous Craft did $2 million in revenue last year. The smirk on my sister's face vanished instantly. 7 figures? From selling candles online? Her champagne glass froze midway to her lips as silence fell over the mahogany dining table. My parents stared at me, completely stunned. Just minutes earlier, they'd been laughing at my cute little hobby business. Now, they couldn't even speak. The shock on their faces would have been comical if it wasn't so revealing of how little they'd ever understood me or my ambitions. My father was the first to recover, clearing his throat awkwardly. $3.2 million? In 1 year? I nodded, taking another sip of my champagne, suddenly enjoying its crisp taste much more than before. Yes, and we're projecting over $5 million this year with the new hotel partnership. Hotel partnership? Claire asked, her marketing brain clearly trying to process this information. Which hotel? I met her gaze steadily. Parker Hotels, actually. We're finalizing a custom line for all their North American properties next week. I'm flying to their headquarters on Monday. Claire's jaw literally dropped. The Parker account, her new crown jewel assignment, was about to feature my garage hobby products prominently in every location. But how? My mother stammered, looking genuinely confused, as if I'd just announced I could fly or breathe underwater. It's just candles. It's not just candles, Mom, I explained, feeling a strange mixture of vindication and sadness at their bewilderment. It's luxury home fragrance experiences. We use proprietary scent technology, sustainable materials, and artisanal production methods. Our signature collections sell for $85 per candle, and we can barely keep them in stock. $85 for a candle? My father exclaimed, nearly spilling his drink. And people actually pay that? Celebrities, luxury hotels, high-end boutiques, and direct consumers, I confirmed. Our holiday limited editions sold out in 3 hours last year at $150 each. Claire set her glass down hard enough that champagne sloshed over the rim. Why? Didn't you ever tell us? All this time we thought. That I was failing? I finished for her. That I needed saving? That my creative pursuits were just childish dreams? The words came out sharper than I intended, years of accumulated hurt edging my voice. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My father looked down at his plate. My mother fidgeted with her napkin, and Claire stared at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, shock mixed with something else. Reevaluation, perhaps. We were just concerned, my mother finally said, her voice small. You never talked about success or growth. We thought you were struggling and too proud to admit it. I was succeeding on my own terms, I replied simply. And yes, maybe I was too proud. Proud enough to want to make it without everyone telling me my dream was worthless. We never said worthless, my father protested weakly. Not in those exact words, I acknowledged, but hobby, little candle, thing. When are you getting a real job? The message was clear. Claire, ever the strategist, seemed to be recalibrating fastest. So you own this company outright? No investors? I nodded. 100% ownership. I bootstrapped everything from my first farmer's market sales. No loans, no investors, no safety net. That's impressive, she admitted. And I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. The realization that my net worth likely exceeded hers many times over, despite her prestigious title and corner office. My father, the former bank manager, who had always lectured me about financial security, looked genuinely stunned. What's your profit margin? About 78% on direct consumer sales, 62% on wholesale, I replied, unable to keep a small note of pride from my voice. We control our entire production process and materials supply chain. He whistled softly, the sound of a man reassessing, Everything he thought he knew. That's better than most Fortune 500 companies. I know, I said simply. I read the same business journals you gave Claire growing up. Another silence fell, this one heavy with unspoken apologies and realizations. My mother reached across the table, tentatively touching my hand. Why didn't you tell us, Becca? We would have been so proud. Would they? I wondered. Or would they have tried to take over, offer unwanted advice, claim some credit for my success? Would they have respected my methods and vision, or tried to make me scale faster, compromise quality for growth, follow conventional business wisdom? I needed to do this my way, I finally answered, without expectations or judgments, without comparisons, without having to justify every decision to people who didn't understand my market or my vision. Claire was studying me now with new eyes, professional respect replacing the familiar condescension. You've built a luxury brand from scratch with no connections or backing. Do you know how many people try to do that and fail? About 97%, I replied. I researched it extensively before I started. My father shook his head slowly, a mixture of amazement and regret crossing his features. All this time, we thought you were the one who needed guidance, but you probably could teach us a thing or two about business. The atmosphere in the room had shifted dramatically. The carefully orchestrated dinner designed to celebrate Claire's achievement had transformed into something entirely different, a long overdue recognition of my own path. The tension that had surrounded me since I'd walked through the door had dissipated, replaced by a new energy, genuine curiosity about my work and life. For the next hour, they asked question after question about my business, real questions, not the patronizing inquiries of the past. How had I developed my sense? What was my marketing strategy? How did I manage production scaling? With each answer, I could see their perception of me transforming before my eyes. As my mother cleared the dessert plates, Claire leaned toward me. I can't believe you're the candle supplier Parker Hotels has been raving about. My team has been trying to identify all their premium partners. She shook her head, laughing softly. Wait until I tell them my little sister is the mysterious founder of Luminous Craft. Actually, I said, I prefer to keep a low profile personally. The brand speaks for itself. Claire studied me with newfound respect. That's actually brilliant marketing, the reclusive artisan behind the luxury brand. It wasn't a marketing strategy, I clarified. I just wanted to create beautiful things without putting myself at the center of the story. My father returned from the kitchen with coffee. So, Becca, he began, his tone entirely different now. Tell us about this Parker Hotels deal. How did that come about? As I explained the partnership and our expansion plans, I felt something shift inside me as well. The chip on my shoulder, the defensive posture I'd maintained for so long around my family, began to dissolve. Yes, they had underestimated me, but perhaps I had underestimated them too. Their capability to recognize they'd been wrong, their capacity to change how they saw me. When it was time to leave, the goodbyes were different. My father hugged me tightly, whispering, I was wrong, and I'm sorry. What you've built is extraordinary. My mother held my face in her hands, tears in her eyes, saying simply, You amaze me. Even Claire's customary air kiss was replaced by a genuine embrace. As I drove home along the river toward my glass and cedar house, the home I'd designed, myself and paid for in cash last year, I realized something profound. Success isn't just about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. About vindicating your own belief in yourself, your vision, your capacity to create something meaningful from nothing. I had spent years hiding my achievements, nurturing my resentment like a precious plant, waiting for the perfect moment of revelation. But now that it had happened, I realized the vindication I'd been seeking wasn't nearly as satisfying as the simple freedom of finally being seen for who I truly was. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Lunch next week? I'd love to hear more about your product development process. I might be able to connect you with some of my other clients, too. If you're interested. I smiled, typing back. I'd like that. Perhaps this was the beginning of something new, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than predetermined roles and expectations. Perhaps we could all grow beyond the narrow identities we'd assigned each other. As I pulled into my driveway, the moon reflected off the river below, casting silver light across the water. I sat for a moment, savoring the peace that comes with authenticity, with standing fully in your truth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't planned, it's simply the truth finally coming to light. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The lunch with Claire never happened. 2 days after our family dinner revelation, she called to cancel. Something came up with the Parker account, she explained, her voice tight with what I recognized as professional anxiety. Can we reschedule? Of course, I replied, expecting to hear from her within a week. I didn't. What I did hear, through a text from my cousin Megan, was that Claire was struggling with the Parker Hotel's account. Apparently, the hotel chain was revamping all their vendor partnerships, starting with their amenities suppliers. Megan had heard this from my aunt, who'd heard it from my mother. Family gossip travels fast. I considered reaching out to Claire, but decided against it. Our newfound respect was too fragile to withstand me offering help she hadn't asked for. Besides, I had my own challenges to focus on. The Parker Hotel's deal wasn't finalized yet, and their procurement director was proving to be a tougher negotiator than I'd anticipated. For the next 3 weeks, I threw myself into work. We were developing a new collection inspired by forgotten botanical gardens, scents that captured the essence of rare plants and historical conservatories. The creative process always energized me, transforming my apartment into a laboratory of fragrance samples, mood boards, and material swatches. One Tuesday evening, while I was testing burn patterns on a new soy coconut wax blend, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and deliveries usually came during business hours. Curious, I set down my notebook and made my way to the door. Through the glass panel, I could see Claire standing on my porch, clutching her designer handbag with white knuckles. She'd never been to my house before. I'd never invited her, and she'd never asked. The surprise of seeing her there momentarily stunned me. When I opened the door, the first thing I noticed was how exhausted she looked. Her normally perfect makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes, and her tailored blazer seemed to hang a little looser on her frame. "Claire," I said, genuinely concerned. "What are you doing here? Is everything okay?" She didn't answer immediately, her eyes moving past me to take in the soaring ceilings and modern art that defined my living space. I could see the calculations happening behind her gaze, the square footage, the designer furniture, the floor-to-ceiling windows with their breathtaking river view. "This is where you live?" she finally asked, her voice small. I nodded, stepping aside. "Come in. Would you like some tea or wine?" "Wine," she said decisively, following me into the kitchen. "Maybe 2. My kitchen island was covered with fragrance samples and testing materials. I quickly cleared a space, pouring us each a glass of Cabernet from a bottle I'd opened the night before. Claire took hers gratefully, drinking half in one long swallow. "I need your help," she said abruptly, setting the glass down. The words seemed physically painful for her to articulate. I leaned against the counter, waiting. Claire asking for my help was unprecedented territory. "It's the Parker account," she continued, refilling her glass without asking. "They're dropping Lumiere entirely. The CEO stayed at their Paris location last month and complained about inconsistent quality, candles tunneling, uneven scent distribution, short burn times." She took another generous sip. My team has 6 weeks to find a replacement vendor, or Winston and Reed might lose the entire account. My career is basically on the line. I understood immediately. And you want me to help you save it? She nodded, avoiding my eyes. I wouldn't ask if there were any other options. We've approached every luxury candle brand in North America. None of them can meet Parker's volume requirements with the customization they want. Except Luminous Craft, I supplied. Except Luminous Craft, she agreed, finally meeting my gaze. The irony isn't lost on me. I sipped my wine slowly, contemplating the situation. What exactly are you asking for, Claire? Do you want me to put in a good word? Share my contact at Parker? She shook her head. I need more than that. I need you to partner with Winston and Reed officially. Let us represent Luminous Craft to Parker as the premium replacement for Lumiere. We'd handle all the marketing and logistics. You'd just supply the product. I almost laughed. You want to be my middleman? Claire, I'm already in direct negotiations with Parker. Have been for months. Why would I give Winston and Reed a cut of profits for work I'm already doing myself? Her expression hardened. Because Winston and Reed has a 10-year relationship with Parker Hotels. We understand their corporate culture, their expansion plans, their decision-making processes. We could secure you better terms, larger volumes, and more visibility. At what cost? I asked pointedly. 20% commission, she stated. When I raised my eyebrows, she quickly added, negotiable, of course. I set my glass down and walked to the windows, looking out at the river. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the water. For years, I'd dreamed of moments like this, Claire coming to me from a position of need rather than condescension. Yet now that it was happening, I felt no satisfaction, only a complex mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. Why Luminous Craft? I asked, turning back to her. Is it just because I'm your sister and you think I'll give you a favorable deal? Or do you actually believe in my product? Claire hesitated, clearly wrestling with her pride. Both, she finally admitted. The sister connection is convenient. But primarily it's because your products are genuinely superior to anything else on the market. Our research team did blind comparisons of every luxury candle brand available. She pulled out her phone, scrolling to find something. Here, these are the internal ratings. She handed me her phone, showing a comprehensive spreadsheet. Luminous Craft led in every category: scent complexity, burn consistency, aesthetic design, packaging sustainability, brand story. The numbers didn't lie. Your candles outperformed Lumiere by 27% overall, and they were the industry standard. Claire continued. The truth is, if you weren't my sister, if we'd discovered Luminous Craft through normal market research, we'd still be approaching you with the same offer. I handed her phone back, surprisingly touched by this professional validation. So you actually think my little hobby business is legitimate now? She winced at hearing her own words echoed back. I deserve that. And yes, I was wrong. What you've built is extraordinary, not just successful, but genuinely excellent. She hesitated before adding, I've been using the samples I bought from your website after our dinner. They're art, Becca. I've never experienced anything like them. The sincere admiration in her voice was something I'd waited my entire life to hear. Not pity, not condescension, but genuine respect, professional respect, from the sister who had always been held up as the model of success. I need to think about it, I said finally. This isn't a decision I can make tonight. She nodded, finishing her wine. I understand, but I don't have much time. The account review is in 3 weeks. After Claire left, I sat on my balcony for hours, watching the city lights reflect on the river. The practical business decision seemed obvious. There was no real advantage to partnering with Winston and Reed when I already had direct contact with Parker Hotels. Yet something about Claire's vulnerable request had resonated with me. For the first time in our adult lives, we had the opportunity to work together as equals, to blend her corporate expertise with my creative vision. The possibility of transforming. Our relationship from rivalry to collaboration was compelling. But was it worth the business risk? The following morning, I called my operations director, Maya, to discuss the potential partnership. Maya had been with me since I was working out of my garage, packing orders at my kitchen table and delivering them in my old Honda. She knew every aspect of my business and had no emotional attachment to my family dynamics. From a purely business perspective, Maya said after hearing the situation, there's no obvious advantage to bringing in a middleman. We have the production capacity to handle Parker's volume, and our direct negotiations are progressing well. But, I prompted, hearing the hesitation in her voice. But, she continued, Winston and Reed does have expertise we lack. They understand corporate hospitality contracts, international distribution logistics, and they have existing relationships with Parker's entire executive team. There could be long-term advantages if we're looking to expand into the global hotel market. Considered this. What if we counter-offered with a limited partnership? Winston and Reed represents us exclusively to Parker for a 10% commission, with the option to expand the relationship to other hotel chains if the first year is successful? Maya smiled. That sounds like a fair compromise, professional but cautious. 3 days later, I invited Claire to meet me at my production facility. She had never seen my business operations, and I wanted her to understand exactly what she would be representing before we discussed terms. When she arrived, I noticed her eyes widen as she took in the scale of the operation. The 5,000-square-foot warehouse space hummed with activity, artisans hand-pouring specialty waxes, quality control specialists testing burn patterns, packaging, designers finalizing sustainable containers. This is not what I expected, Claire admitted as I guided her through each department. I thought it would be more, homemade. Each candle is handcrafted, I explained, introducing her to my lead chandler, Thomas, who had trained in traditional candle making in France. But we combine artisanal techniques with scientific precision. We test every batch for consistency, every fragrance for stability under different conditions. I showed her our research lab, where we developed proprietary wax blends and innovative fragrance combinations. I introduced her to our sustainability team, who ensured every material we used was ethically sourced and environmentally responsible. With each department, I could see her professional respect deepening. So, Claire said when we reached my office, you're not just selling candles. You're running a legitimate manufacturing operation with multiple departments, rigorous quality control, and a serious R&D component. Exactly, I confirmed. Luminous Craft isn't a craft hobby. It's a modern luxury goods company built on craftsmanship principles. We settled into the comfortable chairs by the window overlooking the production floor. I've considered your proposal, I told her, and I have a counteroffer. I outlined the terms Maya and I had discussed, a limited partnership focused exclusively on Parker hotels, with a reduced commission and performance-based expansion options. Claire listened attentively, asking intelligent questions about logistics, timelines, and contractual specifics. That could work, she said when I finished. I'd need to run it by my team, but the terms seem fair. She hesitated before adding, Thank you for considering this, Becca. I know you don't need Winston and Reed. Maybe not, I acknowledged, but perhaps we could benefit from each other's strengths. As we shook hands, finalizing our tentative agreement, I realized we were creating something beyond a business partnership. We were building a bridge between our separate worlds, finding value in our different paths. For the first time, I could see Claire not just as my dismissive older sister, but as a competent professional with her own unique skills. Over the next 2 weeks, our teams worked together to finalize the partnership agreement and develop a presentation for Parker Hotels. Claire brought valuable insights about corporate procurement processes, while I contributed deep product knowledge and creative vision. We found ourselves naturally complementing each other's abilities. Her strategic thinking, balancing my innovation, my authenticity tempering her polished marketing approach. The night before our joint presentation to Parker's executive team, Claire came to my apartment for a final preparation session. We spread our materials across my dining table, rehearsing key points and anticipating potential questions. "We make a good team," Claire observed during a break, sipping the herbal tea I'd made. "Better than I expected, honestly." "We bring different perspectives," I acknowledged. "That's valuable." She nodded, staring into her cup. "I think that's what I never understood before. I always saw your choices as the opposite of mine, as rejecting what I valued. But you weren't rejecting business. You were just doing it differently, creating something authentic instead of climbing someone else's ladder." The simple insight touched me. And I probably underestimated how much skill and strategy it takes to navigate corporate environments successfully. That's its own kind of creativity. Claire smiled, not her usual polished, professional smile, but something more genuine. Maybe we both inherited different parts of Mom and Dad's strengths. "Maybe," I agreed. "Dad's financial acumen, but my version is entrepreneurial, while yours is corporate." "And Mom's perfectionism," Claire added, "though you apply it to craftsmanship while I channel it into strategic execution." This new understanding created a lightness between us, a dissolution of old barriers. As we returned to our preparation, I found myself enjoying our collaboration, appreciating Claire's sharp insights and methodical approach. The Parker Hotel's presentation the following day exceeded all expectations. Our complementary skills created a compelling narrative, Claire establishing the strategic business case while I conveyed the authentic brand story and product quality. Parker's procurement director, who had been hesitant during my earlier negotiations, responded enthusiastically to our combined proposal. "We're prepared to commit to a 2-year exclusive partnership," he announced at the end of our presentation, "with minimum volumes 30% higher than initially discussed." As we left the meeting, contracts in hand, Claire turned to me in the elevator. "We did it," she said, her professional mask briefly dropping to reveal genuine excitement. "We did," I agreed, feeling a surprising surge of sisterly pride. "Your presentation of the market analysis was brilliant, and your demonstration of the custom scent profiles was perfect," she countered. "They were completely captivated." Outside the building, as we waited for our respective cars, Claire surprised me by pulling me into a hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not just for saving my account, but for giving me a chance to really see who you are." I hugged her back, realizing that in our journey to professional respect, we had discovered something more valuable: the possibility of genuine sisterhood. The path forward wouldn't be perfect. We had decades of ingrained patterns to overcome, but, for the first time, I could envision a relationship built on mutual appreciation rather than comparison and judgment. As I drove back to my production facility to share the good news with my team, I reflected on how success had ultimately brought me something more meaningful than vindication. It had created an opportunity for connection, for bridging the gaps that had defined my family relationships for so long. The Parker Hotel's partnership would transform Luminous Craft's business trajectory, opening doors to international markets and institutional clients. But the partnership with my sister had transformed something more fundamental: the narrative of who we were to each other and the possibilities of who we might become. Success isn't just measured in revenue or recognition. Sometimes its greatest value lies in the bridges it helps us build, to new opportunities, to authentic self-expression, and sometimes to the very people who never believed we could achieve it in the first place. Revealed. 6 months after securing the Parker Hotel's partnership, Luminous Craft had transformed from a successful boutique operation into a rapidly growing luxury brand. The Parker contract had opened doors I hadn't even thought to knock on. High-end department stores in Europe, luxury resorts in Southeast Asia, exclusive gift shops in Dubai and Tokyo. Revenue projections for the year had doubled, and my staff had grown to 38 full-time employees. Success brought challenges I hadn't anticipated. Scaling production while maintaining artisanal quality required constant innovation. International shipping regulations created logistical puzzles. Competing luxury brands began circling, some attempting to poach my top talent with promises of equity and inflated salaries. "We need to consider outside investment," Maya suggested during our quarterly strategy meeting. "The growth opportunities are outpacing our current capacity. With proper funding, we could open a second production facility, maybe on the East Coast, to better serve international distribution." I'd always been proud of bootstrapping Luminous Craft, maintaining complete control and ownership. The idea of bringing in investors made me uneasy. "What about a business loan?" I countered. "We have excellent financials." "A loan would help with the production facility," Maya acknowledged, "but we're talking about more than physical expansion. We need specialized talent in international commerce, high-level marketing expertise, logistics optimization. Building those departments internally will take time we don't have if we want to capitalize on our current momentum." I knew she was right. We were at an inflection point. Either embrace significant expansion or risk watching competitors fill the market gap we'd created. My mind drifted to Claire and Winston and Reed. Our Parker Hotels collaboration had proven unexpectedly successful, with Claire's corporate expertise complementing my product innovation in ways that benefited both parties. "What about expanding our partnership with Winston and Reed?" I suggested. "They already understand our brand, and they have the corporate infrastructure we lack." Maya looked skeptical. "Would you be comfortable giving your sister's company that much influence over Luminous Craft? Family business partnerships can get complicated." It was a fair question. While Claire and I had developed a new professional respect, our personal relationship was still evolving, still fragile. The old dynamics occasionally resurfaced, her instinct to take control, my resistance to being managed. Yet something had fundamentally shifted between us. Working together had revealed complementary strengths neither of us had previously recognized in the other. "Let me think about it," I told Maya. "We have options. Let's not rush into anything." That evening, I called my father. Our relationship had gradually warmed since the revelation dinner, moving from awkward reconciliation to cautious friendship. He'd retired from banking 2 years earlier but still consulted occasionally, his financial acumen unchanged. "Expansion capital," he mused when I explained my situation. "That's a significant decision point for any growing business." "I'm torn," I admitted. "Outside investment would accelerate our growth, but I'd lose some control over the company I've built." "What percentage are you considering offering?" he asked, slipping naturally into his banker mindset. "Maya suggests 15–20% for the right strategic partner, enough to gain their commitment without surrendering decision-making authority." "Smart," he approved. "And you're considering Winston and Reed, Claire's company?" "They're one option," I said. "They've proven valuable with the Parker Hotels account, and they understand luxury brand positioning. But there are other possibilities: private equity firms specializing in luxury goods, strategic partnerships with complementary brands." My father was silent for a moment. "You know," he finally said, "I've been thinking about this stage of your business for a while, about how I might help when the time came." "Dad, I'm not asking you for money," I clarified quickly. He chuckled. "I know you're not, and frankly, I don't have the kind of capital you need for this scale of expansion. But I do have something that might be valuable: connections with several investment groups I worked with before retirement. Solid people with experience in consumer luxury brands. If you're open to it, I could arrange some introductions." His offer surprised me. Throughout my childhood and early career, my father had directed his business mentorship almost exclusively toward Claire. His Rolodex of contacts, his Sunday discussions of market trends, his introductions to influential colleagues, these advantages had been Claire's domain, not mine. "You'd do that?" I asked, unable to keep the note of wonder from my voice. "Of course," he replied, sounding slightly hurt that I would question it. "Becca, I know I didn't. I know I wasn't always supportive of your path. I didn't understand it. But I'm immensely proud of what you've built, and I'd be honored to help you take it to the next level." The simple sincerity in his voice touched something deep within me. For years I'd craved this, my father's professional respect, his acknowledgement that my unconventional path was valid, his willingness to invest his social capital in my success. "I'd appreciate that," I said, my throat tight with unexpected emotion. 2 weeks later, I found myself in the private dining room of Elysian, the city's most exclusive restaurant, meeting with Harrison Wells of Meridian Partners, one of the investment groups my father had introduced. Harrison was impeccably dressed, with silver-streaked hair and the confident demeanor of someone accustomed to 8-figure deals. "Your father speaks very highly of your business acumen," he noted as we settled into our appetizers. "Says you've built something remarkable." "I've been fortunate," I replied modestly. Harrison smiled. "In my experience, Ms. Walsh, fortune favors those who combine vision with execution. Your growth metrics suggest both qualities in abundance." As our conversation progressed, I was struck by Harrison's genuine interest in Luminous Craft's creative process. Unlike other investors I'd met, who focused exclusively on margins and scalability, he seemed to understand that our craftsmanship was integral to our value proposition. "What you've created isn't just a product line," he observed. "It's an experience, an emotional connection. The challenge is scaling that connection without diluting its authenticity." "Exactly," I agreed, impressed by his insight. "That's precisely the balance we're trying to maintain." By dessert, Harrison had outlined a compelling investment proposition. 18% equity in exchange for $4, $8 million in growth capital, plus strategic advisorship and access to Meridian's network of luxury retail contacts across Asia and the Middle East. The terms were favorable, the growth potential significant. "I'll need to review the formal proposal with my team," I told him, "but I'm definitely interested in continuing the conversation." Harrison handed me his card. Heavy stock, minimalist design, entirely aligned with luxury brand aesthetics. "Take your time. The right partnership is worth careful consideration." As I drove home, my mind was buzzing with possibilities. Meridian's offer was attractive. It would provide the capital we needed without the complications of involving Claire's company more deeply in Luminous Crafts operations. Yet something held me back from immediate enthusiasm. The following Saturday, our parents invited Claire and me to dinner, a monthly tradition that had evolved since our reconciliation. These gatherings had gradually shifted from awkward obligation to genuine family time, though occasional tensions still surfaced when old patterns emerged. "I met with Meridian Partners this week," I mentioned as we enjoyed my mother's roast chicken. "They made a compelling offer for minority investment in Luminous Craft." Claire's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Harrison Wells's group? They're highly respected in the luxury space." My father nodded, looking pleased. Harrison was impressed with Becca's operation, said her brand positioning was among the strongest he'd seen in years. "You're considering outside investment?" Claire asked, her tone carefully neutral, though I detected a hint of something, disappointment perhaps, beneath her professional composure. "We need expansion capital," I explained. "The international opportunities are significant, but we can't capitalize on them with our current resources." Claire nodded, setting down her fork. "Makes sense. The Parker Hotel's partnership has certainly showcased your potential in the hospitality sector. The conversation moved on to other topics, but later, as we helped clear the table, Claire pulled me aside in the kitchen. "I thought you might consider expanding our partnership," she said quietly. "Winston & Reed has been discussing venture options, and your brand would align perfectly with our portfolio strategy." I loaded plates into the dishwasher, buying time to formulate my response. "I considered it," I admitted. But Maya raised concerns about keeping business and family separate. "Maya's protective of you," Claire observed. "That's good, but she might not see the full picture of what Winston & Reed could offer beyond capital, integrated marketing, across multiple luxury verticals, consolidated distribution channels, cross-brand promotion opportunities." Her pitch was polished, professional, and surprisingly compelling. Claire had clearly given this significant thought. "Send me a formal proposal," I suggested. "I'll review it alongside Meridian's offer." Her expression brightened. "You'll have it Monday morning." As promised, Claire's proposal arrived first thing Monday. Comprehensive, meticulously researched, and surprisingly creative. Winston & Reed was offering slightly less capital than Meridian, $4.2 million for 16% equity, but included value adds Meridian couldn't match: dedicated marketing resources, preferential placement with existing luxury clients, and an intriguing option for luminous craft products to be featured in Winston & Reed's upcoming reality show about luxury lifestyle brands. "Both offers have merit," Maya acknowledged when we reviewed them side by side. "Meridian brings financial strength and Asian market connections, while Winston & Reed offers integrated marketing and media exposure. Plus the family connection," I added, "which could be either an advantage or a complication." Maya studied me carefully. "What does your instinct tell you?" I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "That's the problem. I'm torn between practical business considerations and emotional factors I can't quite untangle. Working with Claire on the Parker account has been surprisingly positive, but is that enough basis for a much deeper business integration?" "There's another option," Maya suggested. "We could propose a joint venture structure instead of direct equity investment. Create a separate entity owned jointly by Luminous Craft and Winston & Reed, specifically for international expansion and marketing. That would give us the benefits of their resources without surrendering equity in our core business." The idea was brilliant, a way to collaborate closely with Claire's company while maintaining clear boundaries and independence. Over the next week, I worked with our attorneys to develop this alternative proposal, structuring it as a counter-offer to both Meridian and Winston & Reed. I presented the joint venture concept to Claire over lunch at a quiet bistro near her office. She listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions about governance, profit sharing, and strategic decision-making. "It's unconventional," she admitted when I finished, "but potentially advantageous for both parties." Her eyes met mine, analytical but warm. "You get access to our infrastructure without diluting your equity, and we get privileged association with the most exciting luxury brand in the market without the capital outlay of full acquisition." "You think Winston & Reed's board would approve?" Claire smiled, confidence radiating from her posture. "Leave that to me. I've developed a certain reputation for identifying valuable opportunities." 2 days later, Claire called with news. Winston & Reed was interested in the joint venture structure, contingent on some governance adjustments and exclusivity provisions. We agreed to have our respective legal teams draft terms. That evening, as I was reviewing production forecasts, in my home office, my doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I was surprised to see my mother standing on the porch, clutching a large portfolio case. "Mom?" I greeted her, opening the door. "Is everything okay? We didn't have plans tonight, did we?" No, she assured me, stepping inside. She hesitated, seeming uncharacteristically nervous. "I have something I want to show you. something I should have shared a long time ago. Intrigued, I led her to the living room. She settled onto the sofa, carefully opening the portfolio case. Inside were dozens of sketches, intricate designs for fabrics, wallpapers, and home furnishings, rendered in watercolor and ink. "These are beautiful," I said, leafing through the artwork. "Did you do these?" She nodded, a wistful smile touching her lips. "Before I met your father, before I became just a mother and housewife, I studied textile design. I wanted to create luxury fabrics for home decor and fashion." I stared at her in astonishment. In all my years growing up, I'd never seen my mother create art, never heard her mention design aspirations. I had no idea. "No one did, really. Not even your father, not fully." She touched one of the sketches gently. "When we got married, I put all this away. It wasn't practical, wasn't secure. We needed stability to start a family." The revelation shifted something in my understanding of my mother, and perhaps of myself. "Is that why you pushed me toward practical career paths? Because you gave up your creative dreams?" She nodded slowly. "I think so, though I didn't recognize it at the time. I convinced myself I was protecting you from disappointment, from struggle. But seeing what you've built with luminous craft—" Her eyes glistened with tears. "You proved that creativity and business success aren't mutually exclusive. You're living the path I was too afraid to pursue." The weight of this confession hung between us, her unacknowledged dreams, her projections onto my choices, the complicated tangle of maternal love and regret. "It's not too late, you know," I told her gently, "to create again. These designs are extraordinary." She shook her head. "Oh, I'm too old to start a career now, but I thought, with your expansion plans, maybe some of these patterns could inspire a limited edition home fragrance collection, a collaboration of sorts." The suggestion took me by surprise, not just the business proposition, but the vulnerability behind it. My mother, who had always presented herself as content with traditional domesticity, was revealing hidden depths, creative ambitions that echoed my own. "I'd like that," I said softly. "Your designs are beautiful, Mom. They deserve to be seen." She smiled, relief and joy illuminating her features. "Really? You think they're good enough?" "More than good enough. They're exceptional." I turned to a particularly striking pattern of interlocking botanical elements. "This one especially. I can already envision a whole collection inspired by it. Heritage garden, perhaps, with notes of heirloom roses, aged cedar, and vintage paper." For the next 2 hours, we lost ourselves in creative collaboration. My mother explaining her design inspirations, me translating visual elements into potential fragrance profiles. For the first time in my adult life, we connected not as mother and daughter locked in old patterns, but as creative equals, each bringing unique talents to a shared vision. When she finally gathered her portfolio to leave, my mother paused at the door. "I've always been proud of you, Becca," she said quietly. "Even when I didn't understand your choices. I just didn't know how to show it properly." "I know, Mom," I replied, and was surprised to realize I meant it. Understanding her hidden creative aspirations had contextualized her past behavior, making her previous dismissal of my path seem less like rejection and more like misguided protection. The following week brought a flurry of activity. Winston and Reed's legal team sent over revised joint venture terms that were surprisingly favorable. Meridian countered with an improved offer, increasing their capital injection while reducing their equity requirements. Claire and I collaborated on a presentation for Winston and Reed's board, refining our vision for international expansion. And I began working with my product development team on concepts for the Heritage Garden collection, inspired by my mother's designs. Amidst this professional momentum, I found myself reflecting on the unexpected personal transformations of recent months. My family relationships, long defined by misunderstanding and comparison, were evolving into something richer and more authentic. My father was lending his professional expertise to my business growth. My mother was sharing her hidden creative talents. My sister was becoming a valued business partner rather than a competitive measuring stick. Success had changed me too. The chip on my shoulder, the defensive posture I'd maintained for so long, had gradually dissolved as external validation removed the need to prove myself. I no longer felt compelled to hide my achievements or resist family connections. Instead, I could engage from a position of confidence, accepting support without fear of control, offering collaboration without surrender of autonomy. One evening, as I was preparing for a video call with potential distributors in Singapore, my phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Board-approved JV structure. Champagne tomorrow to celebrate? I smiled, typing back. Absolutely. My office. 5 p.m. I'll supply the bubbly. Setting down my phone, I walked to the windows of my home office, looking out at the river view that had once symbolized my secret success. The lights of the city sparkled against the darkening sky, mirrored in the gentle current below. I thought about all the nights I'd stood at these same windows, nursing resentment along with my ambitions, waiting for the moment when revealing, my accomplishments would finally prove my worth to those who had doubted me. How ironic that when that moment finally came, it had led not to vindication, but to connection. Not to the satisfaction of proving others wrong, but to the deeper fulfillment of forging new relationships built on mutual respect and appreciation. The true value of success, I realized, wasn't measured in revenue milestones or luxury possessions. It lay in the freedom it provided, freedom to create authentically, to collaborate generously, to reconnect without fear of judgment or control. As I turned back to my desk, preparing for the Singapore call that would further expand Luminous Craft's global footprint, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. For the business I'd built with my own vision and determination. For the family that was learning to see me, and themselves, with new eyes. For the future possibilities unfolding before me, rich with both professional opportunity and personal growth. Success hadn't been the endpoint I'd once imagined. It had been the beginning of something far more valuable. A life where achievement and connection reinforced rather than excluded each other, where proving myself had ultimately led to finding myself and those I loved. The joint venture with Winston & Reed transformed Luminous Craft's trajectory. Within 8 months, our products were featured in luxury hotels across 4 continents, high-end department stores in 12 countries, and exclusive boutiques in destinations I'd only dreamed of visiting. The Heritage Garden collection, inspired by my mother's designs, had become our most successful limited edition release, selling out within days and generating wait lists thousands of names long. Success at this scale created an entirely new set of challenges. Maintaining quality control across global distribution channels required constant vigilance. Protecting our brand from counterfeiters became a significant concern as fake, luminous craft products began appearing in markets from Istanbul to Shanghai. Managing the rapid growth of our team, now over 70 employees, tested my leadership skills in ways I hadn't anticipated. Through it all, the evolving relationships with my family provided unexpected stability. Claire's corporate expertise proved invaluable in navigating international expansion. My father's financial guidance helped me avoid common scaling pitfalls, and my mother's artistic contributions added a personal dimension to our product development, process that customers responded to enthusiastically. The Heritage Garden collection has outsold our projections by 340%, Maya reported during our quarterly review meeting. Retailers are asking when we'll release the next installment. Your mother's designs resonate with consumers on an emotional level, added Elise, our newly hired marketing director. They perceive authenticity in the artistic elements that distinguishes us from competitors. I nodded, pride warming my chest. Mom's already working on concepts for the next collection. She's calling it Forgotten Seasons, patterns inspired by transitional periods in nature that people often overlook. The meeting continued with updates on international sales, production scaling, and new market opportunities. As the team filed out afterward, Maya lingered behind. "I never expected the family collaboration to work this well," she admitted, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Especially with Claire. I was certain mixing family and business would be disastrous." "So was I acknowledged. "But it turns out our differences actually complement each other. Claire excels at structure and systems. I bring creativity and innovation. Together, we're stronger than either of us would be alone." Maya smiled. "Speaking of Claire, have you heard the rumors about Winston and Reed?" "What rumors?" "Industry gossip suggests they're being courted for acquisition by Vantage Global, the multinational marketing conglomerate. Nothing confirmed, but several reliable sources have mentioned it." I frowned. Vantage Global had a reputation for acquiring creative agencies and gradually homogenizing their approach to maximize profit margins. If they acquired Winston and Reed, it could significantly impact our joint venture. "I'll talk to Claire," I assured Maya. "See what she knows." The opportunity came later that week during our monthly sister dinner, an informal tradition we'd established to maintain personal connection alongside our business relationship. We'd chosen a quiet bistro with private tables, perfect for conversations that might drift between personal and professional topics. "I've heard interesting rumors about Winston and Reed," I mentioned casually as we enjoyed our appetizers. "Something about Vantage Global?" Claire's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. News travels fast in this industry. "So it's true?" She sighed, setting down her fork. "Preliminary discussions only, but yes, Vantage has expressed interest. Our exponential growth over the past 18 months has attracted attention. The Parker Hotel's success, the joint venture with Luminous Craft, these high-profile wins have positioned Winston and Reed as a valuable acquisition target." "How do you feel about it?" I asked, detecting mixed emotions beneath her professional demeanor. Claire hesitated, uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Conflicted. Being acquired by Vantage would be financially advantageous for our shareholders, including me. But their corporate culture is different from what we've built at Winston and Reed, more hierarchical, less creative. And what about our joint venture? Would Vantage honor the existing arrangement?" "They'd be contractually obligated to," Claire assured me, "but their long-term strategy might not prioritize it the way we have." I nodded, processing the implications. "When will you decide?" "The board meets next month to review formal offers. It's not entirely my decision. I'm COO, not CEO, but my recommendation will carry significant weight." We moved on to other topics, but the potential acquisition lingered in my thoughts. On my drive home, I found myself contemplating how dramatically my priorities had shifted. A year ago, my primary concern would have been protecting Luminous Craft's independence and growth. Now, I was equally concerned about Claire's professional satisfaction and the creative culture she'd helped build at Winston and Reed. The following morning, I called an emergency meeting with my executive team to discuss contingency planning. If Vantage acquired Winston and Reed, we needed to be prepared for potential changes to our international distribution strategy. "We could accelerate our direct-to-consumer infrastructure development," suggested Nadia, our operations director. "Reduce dependence on the joint venture distribution channels. Or explore alternative agency partnerships in key markets," Elise countered. "Multiple regional partners instead of one global relationship." "Both approaches have merit," I acknowledged. "Let's develop parallel contingency plans. I want options ready regardless of what happens with Winston and Reed." As the meeting concluded, I found myself staring out my office window at the production floor below. watching my team of artisans carefully crafting luxury experiences. We'd come so far from my early days pouring candles at my kitchen table. Yet the core principles remained unchanged: authentic craftsmanship, innovative design, unwavering quality. My assistant interrupted my musings. "Your father's here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but—" "Send him in," I interjected. Since his retirement, my father had become something of an informal advisor to Luminous Craft, stopping by occasionally to discuss business strategy or industry trends. He entered my office with purposeful energy, closing the door behind him. "Have you heard about Winston and Reed?" he asked without preamble. "The Vantage acquisition rumors?" "Yes, Claire confirmed them last night." He nodded, settling into a chair. "I've been making some calls this morning. My contacts at Meridian Partners are very interested in what's happening." "Meridian? The investment group that offered to back us before we formed the joint venture?" "The same. Harrison Wells specifically wanted me to reach out." My father leaned forward, his expression intent. "Becca, they see an opportunity here, not just for Luminous Craft, but potentially for Winston and Reed as well." "What kind of opportunity?" "A management buyout. If Winston and Reed's leadership team wants to avoid Vantage acquisition, Meridian would consider financing an MBO, with Luminous Craft as a strategic partner and minority investor." I stared at him, processing the implications. "You're suggesting we help Claire buy her own company?" "Not exactly. I'm suggesting you consider whether preserving your successful partnership with Winston and Reed is worth strategic investment. Meridian would provide the majority of the capital. Luminous Craft would contribute a smaller portion, but gain expanded strategic influence." The proposal was unexpected but intriguing. Instead of scrambling to protect ourselves from Winston and Reed's potential acquisition, we could help prevent that acquisition while strengthening our partnership. Would Claire even want this? I wondered aloud. A management buyout is complex, risky. "That's for her to decide," my father replied. "But you can present it as an option. Harrison is prepared to meet with both of you to discuss specifics if there's interest." After my father left, I spent hours analyzing the financial implications, competitive landscape, and strategic considerations of Meridian's proposal. By evening, I'd developed a preliminary framework that could benefit all parties: Luminous Craft, Winston and Reed, and Meridian Partners. I called Claire, inviting her to breakfast the following morning at my house rather than a restaurant. This conversation required privacy and depth that public venues couldn't provide. When she arrived, I guided her to my sunroom overlooking the river, where I'd prepared fresh coffee and pastries from our favorite bakery. Claire looked tired, the pressure of the pending acquisition evidently taking its toll. "You look like you haven't been sleeping," I observed as I poured her coffee. She managed a wry smile. "Vantage negotiations, quarterly projections, and 3 international clients in crisis mode simultaneously. Sleep is a luxury I can't afford right now." "What if there was an alternative to the Vantage acquisition?" I asked, sliding seamlessly into the conversation's purpose. "A way to preserve Winston and Reed's independence and creative culture?" Her coffee cup paused midway to her lips. "I'm listening." I outlined Meridian's proposal, explaining how a management buyout, backed by Meridian's capital and Luminous Craft's strategic partnership, could allow Winston and Reed's leadership team to maintain control while accessing the resources needed for continued growth. As I spoke, I watched Claire's expression transition from skepticism to consideration to cautious interest. When I finished, she set down her cup deliberately. "It's an intriguing alternative," she acknowledged, "but incredibly risky. Management buyouts often leave the acquired company with significant debt." "True," I agreed, "but Meridian's structure would be equity-heavy, minimizing the debt burden, and our expanded partnership would guarantee steady revenue streams to support the transition." Claire's analytical mind was clearly processing the possibilities, weighing risks against potential rewards. The board is primarily concerned with shareholder value. If Vantage offers the highest immediate return, sometimes the highest value isn't reflected in the initial offer price, I countered. Winston and Reed's continued independence could generate substantially more long-term value, especially with enhanced luminous craft integration. She nodded slowly. I'd need to see detailed financial projections, term sheets, governance structures. Of course, Harrison Wells is prepared to meet with us both to discuss specifics. Claire's gaze met mine, a mixture of professional assessment and sisterly appreciation. You've put significant thought into this. Why? Wouldn't it be simpler for Luminous Craft to just find new distribution partners if Vantage acquires us? I considered her question carefully. Simpler, yes, but not better. Our partnership works because we understand each other's strengths and vision. We've built something valuable together, something worth preserving. I paused, adding softly, and I care about your professional satisfaction. Vantage is corporate. Culture would stifle you. Something shifted in Claire's expression, a moment of genuine vulnerability breaking through her polished professional veneer. It would, she admitted quietly. Everything I've worked to build at Winston & Reed would be systematically dismantled for quarterly profit targets. Then let's explore the alternative, I encouraged. No commitments yet, just serious exploration. The following week blurred into a whirlwind of meetings, financial analyses, and strategic planning sessions. Harrison Wells and his team from Meridian conducted thorough due diligence on Winston & Reed while simultaneously developing MBO financing structures. Claire worked discreetly with key members of her executive team to gauge interest in a management-led alternative to Vantage acquisition. Through it all, I found myself in an unexpected role. Bridge builder between the corporate finance world and the creative agency environment, translator between Meridian's investment language and Winston & Reed's brand-centered culture. My unique perspective as both entrepreneur and brand creator allowed me to articulate value propositions that resonated with both sides. You're remarkably effective at this, Harrison observed after a particularly productive negotiation session. You understand the financial mechanics, but also the intangible creative elements that drive actual value in these enterprises. I've had to learn both languages, I replied. Building Luminous Craft taught me that creativity without business acumen is just a hobby, but business without creative vision is just commodity production. He nodded appreciatively. That balanced perspective is rare and valuable. Have you considered joining Meridian's advisory board after this deal concludes? We work with numerous luxury brands that could benefit from your insight. The invitation caught me by surprise, a prestigious opportunity I wouldn't have imagined possible even a year earlier. I'd be interested in exploring that, I acknowledged, mental doors opening to new possibilities. 3 days before Winston and Reed's board was scheduled to vote on the Vantage acquisition offer, we finalized our alternative proposal. The management buyout would be structured as a partnership between Meridian partners, providing 65% of the capital, Winston & Reed's executive team, contributing 25%, and Luminous Craft, investing 10%. The resulting ownership structure would keep operational control with the current management while providing the financial resources needed for continued growth. Claire and I met for dinner the night before she would present the MBO proposal to her board. She looked simultaneously exhausted and energized, the contradictory state familiar to anyone who has poured themselves into a high-stakes professional challenge. Tomorrow determines whether Winston & Reed remains independent or becomes another division of a multinational conglomerate, she said, swirling her wine contemplatively. Regardless of the outcome, I want to thank you for making this alternative possible. The proposal stands on its own merits, I replied. I just helped connect the right people. Claire shook her head. You did much more than that. You saw a way forward when I was too overwhelmed to see beyond the immediate crisis. You leveraged your resources and relationships to create possibilities. That's what true leadership looks like. Her words affected me deeply. Throughout our lives, Claire had been the measuring stick against which our parents had evaluated my choices and achievements. To hear her recognize my leadership, to acknowledge value in my approach, felt like the closing of a circle that had defined much of my life. We make a good team, I said simply, raising my glass in a small toast, each bringing different strengths. The following morning, Claire presented the management buyout proposal to Winston & Reed's board of directors. For 6 hours, she and the Meridian team fielded questions, addressed concerns, and articulated the strategic advantages of independence with strategic partnership over acquisition by a multinational conglomerate. When she finally called me late, that afternoon, her voice conveyed the outcome before her words did. They approved our proposal, she announced, exhaustion and elation mingling in her tone. 8-3 vote in favor of the MBO over the Vantage acquisition. Congratulations, I replied, genuine happiness for her success warming my voice. You did it. We did it, she corrected. This wouldn't have happened without you. Over the following months, the management buyout transformed both our companies. Winston & Reed emerged as an independent agency with renewed creative energy and entrepreneurial spirit. Luminous Craft gained expanded strategic influence in international luxury markets through our enhanced partnership stake. The Forgotten Seasons collection, featuring my mother's designs, launched globally through our jointly owned distribution channels, breaking sales records in every market. My role evolved as well. Beyond leading Luminous Craft's continued growth, I accepted positions on both Winston & Reed's advisory board and Meridian Partners' Luxury Brand Council. These new responsibilities expanded my perspective beyond my own company, allowing me to shape broader industry conversations about authentic luxury, sustainable production, and the integration of artisanal quality with global scale. One evening, nearly 18 months after the management buyout, my parents hosted a dinner celebration at their home. The occasion was twofold: the 5th anniversary of Luminous Craft's founding and the official launch of my mother's design studio, a small creative consultancy focused on pattern design for luxury home goods, born from the unexpected success of her contributions to our collections. As we gathered around the dining table, my parents, Claire, key members of both our companies, and the Meridian Partners team, I was struck by how thoroughly our family narrative had transformed. My father, once dismissive of my impractical creative path, now proudly introduced me to his business associates as the visionary behind Luminous Craft. My mother, who had suppressed her own artistic talents for decades, was excitedly discussing upcoming design collaborations with luxury textile manufacturers. Claire, who had once defined success solely through corporate achievement, now spoke passionately about preserving creative independence within business structures. When my father stood to offer a toast, his voice carried unexpected emotion. To Becca, he began, raising his glass, whose courage to follow her own path ultimately expanded all of our horizons. You didn't just build a successful company, you showed us all new possibilities for integrating creativity with business excellence. The simple acknowledgement touched me deeply. It wasn't just about professional validation anymore. It was recognition of how my journey had created ripples that transformed our entire family ecosystem. Later that evening, as guests mingled on the patio, Claire joined me at the garden's edge, both of us taking a moment of quiet amid the celebration. "Remember when I mocked your little candle business?" she asked, a self-deprecating smile touching her lips. "God, I was insufferable." I laughed softly. "You were just reflecting what you'd been taught to value. We all were." "Still," she continued, "I sometimes wonder where I'd be if you hadn't revealed your success that night. Probably working under some soul-crushing Vantage executive, implementing standardized marketing protocols instead of leading an independent agency. And I might still be hiding my achievements out of spite and fear, I acknowledged, never experiencing the satisfaction of true collaboration or the joy of reconnecting with our family. Claire nodded thoughtfully. It's strange how success means something different now. Before, I measured it in titles, corner offices, and recognition from superiors. Now. She gestured toward the gathering, where my father was enthusiastically explaining my mother's design process to Harrison Wells. Success looks more like this: creating something meaningful, preserving independence, lifting others up along the way. Her words crystallized what I'd been feeling throughout my journey. True success wasn't just about proving skeptics wrong or accumulating wealth and status. It was about creating authentic value, maintaining personal integrity, and building meaningful connections along the way. As we rejoined the celebration, I caught sight of my mother showing her portfolio to a textile manufacturer from Milan. My father engaged in animated conversation with Meridian's investment team, and the Winston & Reed executives mingling seamlessly with Luminous Craft's creative directors. Boundaries between family and business, between creativity and commerce, between past limitations and future possibilities had all blurred into something richer and more integrated than I could have imagined. The path hadn't been direct or easy. There had been wounded pride to overcome, old patterns to disrupt, new territories of relationship to navigate. But the journey had transformed not just my business prospects, but my understanding of success itself. In revealing my accomplishments that fateful dinner, I hadn't simply silenced critics or validated my choices. I'd created an opening for authentic connection, for mutual recognition, for collective growth. The moment my sister's mocking smile froze as she learned my true worth wasn't just about vindicating my path. It was the beginning of a new journey where success meant something far more meaningful than either of us had previously understood. 2 years after the Winston & Reed management buyout, Luminous Craft had evolved from a luxury candle brand into a comprehensive lifestyle company. Our product lines now included home fragrances, premium bath and body collections, artisanal textiles, featuring my mother's designs, and a newly launched sustainable home decor division. Annual revenue had surpassed $42 million, with presence in 27 countries, and a team of over 100 passionate artisans and business professionals. Success at this scale brought opportunities I'd never anticipated. Prestigious business. Schools invited me to guest lecture on entrepreneurship and creative leadership. Industry publications featured profiles examining the luminous craft phenomenon. Established luxury conglomerates began making discreet acquisition inquiries, offering eye-watering valuations that would have seemed impossible when I was pouring candles in my garage. Through it all, I remained committed to our founding principles: authentic craftsmanship, sustainable practices, and creating experiences that brought genuine moments of tranquility to people's lives. These weren't just marketing talking points. They were the compass that guided every business decision, from sourcing raw materials to structuring employee benefits. We've received another acquisition offer, Maya informed me during our weekly strategy meeting. Lux Holdings is proposing $86 million for a complete buyout. That's the third offer this quarter, I noted, scanning the preliminary proposal she'd placed on my desk, and the most aggressive valuation yet. Maya nodded. They're particularly interested in our proprietary scent development process and our direct-to-consumer analytics platform. The offer includes retention packages for key creative personnel and guaranteed creative autonomy for at least 3 years. I set the document aside. The same promises every conglomerate makes before gradually homogenizing what made the brand special in the first place. So that's a no? Maya asked, though she already knew my answer. It's a no, I confirmed. Luminous Craft isn't built to be absorbed into a portfolio of luxury brands. Our independence is integral to our authenticity. Maya smiled. a mixture of relief and pride crossing her features. "I was hoping you'd say that, though I feel obligated to remind you that $86 million would allow you to do, well, anything else you might dream of." I laughed. "Who says I'm not already living my dream?" After Maya left, I turned to the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office, watching the production floor below where my team of artisans crafted our signature collections. The methodical, almost meditative nature of their work, pouring, trimming, testing, packaging, never failed to center me when business complexities threatened to pull me away from our core purpose. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Lunch. Tomorrow? Have interesting proposition to discuss." I smiled, typing back, "Intrigued. Noon at Ellison's?" Since the management buyout, Winston & Reed had flourished under Claire's leadership. Freed from the constant pressure of potential acquisition, the agency had become more selective about its clients, focusing on brands that valued creative excellence over cookie-cutter marketing solutions. Their partnership with Luminous Craft had expanded beyond distribution to include integrated brand storytelling across multiple channels. Claire was waiting when I arrived at Ellison's the following day, her laptop open and a stack of folders neatly arranged beside her water glass. Whatever this interesting proposition entailed, she'd come prepared with typical thoroughness. "You look like you're about to pitch a new client," I observed as I slid into the booth opposite her. She smiled, closing her laptop. "In a way, I am, though this particular prospect is already family." After ordering, Claire got straight to business. Winston & Reed has been developing a new division focused on sustainable luxury brands, companies committed to ethical practices, environmental responsibility, and authentic craftsmanship while maintaining true luxury positioning. "Sounds right in Luminous Craft's wheelhouse," I noted. "Are you looking to expand our marketing partnership?" "Much more than that," Claire replied, opening one of her folders and sliding it across the table. "We're launching the Authentic Luxury Guild, a coalition of independent luxury brands committed to transparency, sustainability, and artisanal excellence. Membership would include shared resources for sustainable sourcing, collective negotiating power with retailers, and collaborative innovation initiatives." I scanned the prospectus she'd provided, immediately grasping the potential. "You're creating an alternative to conglomerate acquisition for independent luxury brands." "Exactly," Claire confirmed, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Most small to mid-sized luxury brands eventually sell to conglomerates because they need access to resources, expertise, and economies of scale. The Guild would provide those benefits without sacrificing independence or creative control." "Who else are you approaching?" I asked, already intrigued. Claire named several prestigious independent brands across various luxury categories: fashion, accessories, home goods, beauty. All were known for their craftsmanship, sustainability commitments, and resistance to conglomerate acquisition despite numerous offers. "We want Luminous Craft as a founding member," she continued. "Your brand story, independent female founder, building a global luxury brand while maintaining control and authenticity, is exactly the narrative the Guild wants to champion. What would membership involve practically?" She outlined the structure: quarterly investment in shared resources, participation in collaborative projects, commitment to transparent practices, and active engagement in Guild governance. In return, members would gain access to collective purchasing power, shared innovation resources, and enhanced market positioning as part of a movement redefining authentic luxury. "It's not about merging companies or diluting individual brand identities," Claire emphasized. "It's about creating infrastructure that allows independent luxury brands to remain independent while competing effectively against conglomerate-owned competitors." As she spoke, I realized how profoundly Claire's business philosophy had evolved. The sister who once defined success through corporate hierarchies and prestigious client logos was now championing a collaborative model designed to preserve creative independence and authentic craftsmanship. "This is brilliant," I said sincerely. "It addresses the exact pressures that push independent brands toward acquisition." Claire smiled, a hint of vulnerability beneath her polished exterior. "I learned from watching you. Luminous Craft proved that maintaining independence doesn't mean limiting growth. It just requires creative approaches to business challenges." Her acknowledgement touched me deeply. "I'm interested," I told her. "Let me review the detailed proposal with my team, but provisionally count Luminous Craft in as a founding member." Over the following weeks, I worked closely with Claire and the other prospective guild founders to refine the structure and vision. The initial concept expanded to include an innovation lab for sustainable materials research, a collective apprenticeship program to preserve traditional craftsmanship techniques, and a certification process for authentic luxury practices. During this period, my father surprised me with an unexpected gift, a journal he'd kept during the early years of my business, recording his evolving perspective on my unconventional path. "I found this while organizing my office," he explained when he handed me the leather-bound book. "I thought you might find it interesting, and perhaps educational for that memoir you mentioned considering." Alone that evening, I opened the journal with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. The early entries reflected exactly what I'd expected: concern about my career choices, comparisons to Claire's more practical path, worry about my financial security. But as the pages progressed, I witnessed a gradual transformation in his perspective. "Becca showed me her business plan today," read an entry from 7 years earlier. "More thorough than many I've seen from established businesses. Perhaps there's more to this candle thing than I initially thought." And later, "Stopped by her workspace unexpectedly. Impressive attention to detail in her production process. She's approaching this with surprising rigor and discipline." Most revealing was an entry dated just weeks before the fateful family dinner where I'd revealed my success. Beginning to wonder if I've underestimated Becca's business acumen. Claire mentioned that luxury candle brands are becoming significant players in the home goods market. Could Becca's hobby actually be a viable business model? Have I been viewing her choices through an outdated lens? The journal documented my father's internal journey from dismissal to curiosity to reluctant respect, all occurring before I'd revealed my financial success. He had begun reassessing his perspective independent of external validation, questioning his own assumptions about what constituted a real career in the modern economy. This revelation shifted something profound in my understanding of our family dynamics. I had assumed my parents and Claire never believed in me until confronted with irrefutable evidence of my success. But the journal suggested a more nuanced reality, that seeds of recognition had been germinating beneath the surface, unspoken but present. I called my father the following morning. "I read your journal," I told him. "Thank you for sharing it." "I wasn't always the most supportive father," he acknowledged, regret coloring his tone. "I'm sorry it took me so long to recognize the validity of your vision." "What matters is that you were willing to reconsider," I replied. "Not everyone has that capacity." He was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about Claire's Authentic Luxury Guild initiative. It reminds me of the agricultural cooperatives my grandfather participated in. Independent farmers joining forces to compete with corporate agriculture while maintaining individual farm identities." "That's an interesting parallel," I observed, surprised by his insight. "The underlying principle is timeless," he continued. "Sometimes the best way to preserve independence is through strategic collaboration." His understanding of the Guild's purpose reinforced my commitment to the initiative. The following week, I signed Luminous Craft as a founding member, joining 7 other independent luxury brands in launching what business publications would later call a revolutionary approach to sustainable luxury. The Guild's formation coincided with another significant development. Maya, who had been my right hand since Luminous Craft's earliest days, approached me about transitioning to a new role. I'd like to establish a mentorship program for female entrepreneurs in creative industries, she explained, helping other women navigate the path you've pioneered, building businesses that honor both artistic integrity and financial sustainability. That sounds like important work, I acknowledged, though the prospect of losing her operational leadership created immediate anxiety. But Luminous Craft needs you. Maya smiled. Not in the same way anymore. You've built an exceptional executive team. It's time for me to create something new, just as you did. Though her decision created practical challenges, I recognized the parallels to my own journey. Maya had supported my vision. Now it was my turn to support hers. Together, we developed a transition plan that would gradually shift her responsibilities to other team members while establishing the mentorship program as a Luminous Craft Foundation initiative. You're creating a leadership legacy, my mother observed when I explained the situation over lunch. Not just building a company, but nurturing new voices and visions. Her perspective resonated deeply. I'd been so focused on growing Luminous Craft that I hadn't fully appreciated how my journey might inspire others to forge their own paths. Maya's mentorship program represented an opportunity to transform individual success into broader impact. With this heightened awareness, I began restructuring Luminous Craft's apprenticeship program, creating clearer pathways for talented artisans to develop entrepreneurial skills alongside craftsmanship expertise. I established a quarterly innovation grant for employees with ideas for new products or processes, regardless of their position within the company. And I initiated a partnership with local art schools to provide business fundamentals education to creative students. These initiatives coincided with the Authentic Luxury Guild's official launch, an event that attracted significant industry attention and sparked conversations about alternative models for luxury brand development. Claire and I found ourselves unexpectedly positioned as thought leaders challenging conventional wisdom about creative businesses. The Walsh sisters are rewriting the rules of luxury brand building, declared a prominent industry publication, featuring side-by-side profiles of our complementary approaches, Claire's strategic collaboration model, and my authentic craftsmanship philosophy. The article's framing struck me as particularly meaningful. For most of our lives, Claire and I had been positioned in opposition to each other, the practical achiever versus the impractical dreamer, the corporate success versus the artistic dabbler. Now we were recognized as different sides of the same coin, each bringing essential perspectives to a shared vision of authentic luxury. 6 months after the Guild's formation, we gathered the founding members for a retreat at Luminous Craft's newly established mountain campus, a former resort property I'd acquired and renovated as a creative workshop and innovation space for our team. Nestled among pine forests with sweeping mountain views, the campus embodied our commitment to creating spaces that fostered both tranquility and creativity. The event combined strategic planning for the Guild's future with hands-on workshops highlighting each brand's craftsmanship. Claire masterfully facilitated discussions on collective goals and resource allocation, while I guided explorations of authentic brand storytelling and creative leadership. During an evening reception, I found myself standing on the main lodge's terrace with Claire, watching the setting sun paint the mountains in hues that reminded me of our Forgotten Seasons collection. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" she asked, gesturing toward the gathering of luxury brand founders and creative directors mingling inside, industry leaders who now looked to us for guidance. "Never," I admitted. I was too focused on proving myself to envision where the path might actually lead. Claire nodded, understanding. I was so concerned with meeting external expectations that I couldn't see possibilities beyond predetermined definitions of success. "And now we're redefining those expectations for others," I observed. "Creating space for different kinds of excellence," she agreed. "That might be the most meaningful success of all." Her words articulated something I'd been feeling with increasing clarity. That my greatest achievement wasn't building a multi-million-dollar brand or receiving industry accolades. but demonstrating an alternative path that others could follow and adapt. The following morning, I led a workshop on creative resilience, sharing candid stories about Luminous Craft's evolution from garage operation to global brand. As I spoke, I noticed an intense young woman in the front row taking meticulous notes, her expression a mixture of determination and uncertainty I recognized intimately. During the break, she approached me. "I'm Imani," she introduced herself. "I founded Solstice Textiles 2 years ago. Your story." She hesitated, seeming to search for words. "Your journey gives me hope that I won't have to compromise my vision to achieve sustainable growth." Her comment touched something fundamental in me. "What specific challenges are you facing?" I asked. For the next 15 minutes, we discussed her beautiful hand-dyed textile business, the tension between artisanal production methods and scale, the pressure from investors to outsource to reduce costs, her commitment to traditional techniques learned from her Ghanaian grandmother. "Everyone tells me I have to choose," she explained. "Either stay small and authentic or grow and compromise. There doesn't seem to be a middle path." I smiled, recognizing her dilemma intimately. That false dichotomy is exactly why we formed the Guild. There are creative solutions that allow for scale without sacrificing authenticity. You just need the right strategies and support systems. By the retreat's end, Imani had been connected with resources through the Guild, mentorship, through Maya's program, and technical expertise from Luminous Craft's production team. Watching her leave with renewed confidence and practical pathways forward, I realized I'd come full circle from my own early struggles. That evening, as the campus quieted after our guest's departure, I walked alone through the mountain paths, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. From pouring candles in my garage while hiding my ambitions from my dismissive family, to creating infrastructure that empowered other creative entrepreneurs to forge their own authentic paths. Success had evolved from personal validation to something far more meaningful, creating possibilities not just for myself, but for others facing similar challenges. The moment my sister mocked my worthless business at that family dinner now seemed like a necessary catalyst that had ultimately transformed not just my own circumstances but expanded horizons for an entire community of creative entrepreneurs. As I reached a viewpoint overlooking the valley below, I remembered something my father had written in his journal. Perhaps Becca's greatest strength isn't her creativity or business acumen, but her unwavering belief that authentic vision and commercial success aren't mutually exclusive. If she proves that principle correct, her impact could extend far beyond whatever business she builds. His insight had proven prescient. The true value of my journey wasn't measured in revenue milestones or luxury possessions, but in the pathway it illuminated for others, showing that one could build significant success without surrendering authentic vision, that different models of achievement deserved equal respect, that proving skeptics wrong could ultimately create space for connection rather than division. The mountain air carried the scent of pine and the promise of possibilities yet to unfold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, guild initiatives to develop, product innovations to refine, mentees to guide. But tonight, standing under a sky brilliant with stars, I savored the knowledge that success meant something far richer than I'd once imagined. It wasn't about silencing mockery or accumulating validation. It was about creating value that transcended personal achievement, building bridges across different perspectives, establishing foundations for future innovators, and demonstrating that the most meaningful success stories aren't about proving others wrong, but about proving what's possible when we remain true to our authentic vision. 5 years after founding the Authentic Luxury Guild, I stood at the podium of the Grand Ballroom at the Waldorf Astoria, surveying the audience gathered for our annual Sustainable Luxury Summit. What had begun as a collaboration between 8 independent brands had grown into a movement with over 40 members across 12 countries. Together, we were redefining what luxury meant in an age of increasing consciousness about sustainability, ethics, and authentic value. True luxury isn't about exclusivity through price point, I concluded my keynote address. It's about exclusivity through meaning, products created with intention, excellence, and genuine care for both people and planet. When we maintain those principles, financial success follows naturally, not as the primary goal, but as the result of creating something of authentic value. The applause that followed felt like validation not just of my words, but of the journey that had brought me to this moment. Among the attendees were faces that reflected different chapters of that journey. My parents beaming with unabashed pride from the front row, Claire seated with her Winston & Reed executive team, Maya surrounded by graduates of her entrepreneurship mentorship program, and dozens of guild members whose businesses had flourished under our collaborative model. After the presentation, a young journalist approached me for the summit's featured interview. "Your story has become almost legendary in entrepreneurial circles," she began. The candle maker whose sister mocked her worthless business, only to be stunned by its multi-million-dollar success. Looking back, what would you say was the pivotal moment that made everything possible? It was a question I'd been asked countless times in various forms, and my answer had evolved over the years. Early on, I might have pointed to specific business decisions, my innovative scent development process, my direct-to-consumer strategy, or my early investment in sustainable materials. Later, I might have highlighted relationship breakthroughs, the dinner where I revealed my success, the partnership with Claire, or the reconciliation with my parents. But with the perspective of time and achievement, I now saw those moments as waypoints rather than destinations. The truly pivotal moment wasn't when my family discovered my success, I replied. It wasn't even when I secured my first major contract or received industry recognition. It was much earlier and far less dramatic. The day I decided that external validation couldn't be my primary motivation. The journalist looked intrigued. "Can you elaborate?" There was a point early in my journey when I realized I was building luminous craft with two conflicting motivations. Part of me was creating something I genuinely believed in, products that brought beauty, tranquility, and authentic craftsmanship into people's lives. But another part was fueled by resentment, by the desire to prove wrong everyone who had dismissed my path. I paused, remembering that internal struggle with perfect clarity. The breakthrough came when I consciously chose to prioritize creation over vindication, to build something excellent because excellence itself was meaningful, not because it would silence critics or generate validation. That mental shift changed everything about how I approached challenges, how I measured success, and ultimately, how I related to the people around me, including my family. The reporter nodded thoughtfully. Yet the moment of revelation to "Your family has become such a central part of your public narrative." "That's understandable," I acknowledged. "It makes for a dramatic story. The underestimated daughter revealing her hidden success." But focusing too much on that moment misses the deeper truth. Real success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right, confirming your own belief in what's possible when you commit fully to an authentic vision. As the interview concluded, I noticed Imani approaching. In the 3 years since we'd met at the mountain retreat, her textile business had flourished under the Guild's collaborative model, expanding from a one-woman operation to a thriving atelier with 15 artisans practicing traditional dyeing techniques. Her fabrics now appeared in high-end fashion collections and prestigious interior design projects, attracting attention for both their extraordinary beauty and their preservation of cultural heritage. "Your keynote was inspiring," she said, embracing me warmly, especially the part about measuring success beyond financial metrics. "How are things at Solstice?" I asked. Her face lit up. "We just finalized a collaborative collection with the Smithsonian, documenting and preserving traditional Ghanaian textile techniques. And the apprenticeship program is expanding. We'll have 10 new trainees starting next month." "That's wonderful," I replied, genuinely delighted by her success. "You've created something truly meaningful." "I couldn't have done it without the guild," she said earnestly. "Having that infrastructure and community made it possible to scale without compromising our core values." Her words reminded me of a conversation with Claire years earlier, when she'd first proposed the guild concept. We'd discussed how most independent luxury brands eventually faced a difficult choice: remain small and maintain complete creative control, or accept conglomerate acquisition to access resources needed for significant growth. The guild had created a third path: collaborative independence that allowed for scale without surrender of authentic vision. Following the summit's closing reception, my family gathered for dinner at my parents' home. These gatherings had become a cherished tradition, evolving from the tense, comparison-laden meals of my youth into genuine celebrations of each person's unique journey and contributions. My mother, now a successful design consultant whose patterns appeared in collections across 3 continents, had prepared her signature roast with seasonal vegetables from her garden. My father, though technically retired, had found new purpose advising creative entrepreneurs through a program he'd developed with Maya. Claire's leadership of Winston & Reed had transformed the agency into a champion for authentic luxury, attracting clients committed to meaning beyond marketing. As we settled around the dining table, the same one where, years earlier, Claire had mocked my little candle thing, I was struck by how thoroughly our family narrative had transformed. The competitive comparison that once defined our relationships had given way to genuine appreciation for each person's unique strengths and contributions. "I've been thinking about writing a book," my father announced as we enjoyed dessert, "about financial strategies for creative entrepreneurs. Too many talented people believe they have to choose between authentic expression and business viability. I want to help them navigate that false dichotomy." "That's a wonderful idea," I encouraged. "Your banking background combined with your experience advising creative businesses gives you a unique perspective." My mother nodded enthusiastically. "You could include case studies from guild members, show the diversity of successful approaches." "I'd be happy to connect you with our publishing contacts," Claire offered. "This concept has significant market potential. The easy collaboration, the genuine support for each other's endeavors. These would have seemed impossible during the years when approval was rationed and achievements were ranked according to conventional metrics of success. Yet here we were, a family of individuals pursuing diverse passions while actively contributing to each other's growth." Later that evening, as Claire helped me clear the dishes, she paused, a wistful expression crossing her features. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been so dismissive of your business at that dinner years ago? If we'd found our way to this supportive relationship without that confrontation?" I considered her question carefully. "I think we needed that catalyst," I replied honestly. "We were all so entrenched in our respective positions, you as the successful daughter, me as the creative but impractical one, our parents as the arbiters of what constituted legitimate achievement. That moment cracked open the narrative we'd been living in, created space for something new to emerge." Claire nodded thoughtfully. "Still, I'm sorry for how I treated you. For all those years of condescension and judgment. And I'm sorry for hiding my success out of spite," I countered. "For nurturing resentment instead of opening channels for genuine connection." We shared a smile of mutual forgiveness and understanding. Both of us had contributed to the dynamic that once defined our relationship, and both had participated in its transformation. After everyone had gone home, I lingered for a while with my parents in their cozy living room. My mother showed me her latest designs, patterns inspired by healing gardens throughout history, commissioned by a renowned wellness resort. My father discussed his approach to the book project, his eyes bright with purpose and enthusiasm. "I'm proud of you both," I told them sincerely, "for embracing new chapters and possibilities." My father reached for my hand. We're the ones who are proud, Becca. Not just of what you've built with luminous craft, but of how you've built it, with integrity, vision, and generosity of spirit. You showed us all a different way forward, my mother added softly. Gave us permission to reimagine what success could look like, what family could be. Their words touched me deeply, completing a circle of reconciliation and mutual appreciation that had been years in the making. Driving home that night, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. From the young woman hiding her achievements, while nursing resentment, to the entrepreneur revealing her success in a moment of dramatic vindication, to the industry leader creating pathways for others to succeed on their own authentic terms. The most meaningful transformation hadn't been in my business metrics or industry recognition, but in my understanding of success itself. What had begun as a quest for validation had evolved into something far richer, creating value that extended beyond personal achievement to empower others, heal relationships, and demonstrate possibilities. As I pulled into the driveway of my home, the modern glass and cedar house overlooking the river that had once symbolized my secret success, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not just for the material comfort and professional recognition I'd achieved, but for the journey's unexpected gifts, reconciliation with my family, collaborative partnership with my sister, and the opportunity to help others navigate their own paths to authentic achievement. The moment my sister had mocked my worthless business, later freezing in shock at learning my true worth, had indeed been a dramatic turning point. But the story's true significance lay in what happened afterward. How that moment of confrontation eventually led not to division but to connection, not to triumphant vindication but to mutual growth. Success, I had learned, wasn't about silencing critics or accumulating validation. It was about creating authentic value, remaining true to one's vision, and ultimately expanding possibilities not just for yourself, but for everyone whose life you touch. That understanding, more than any luxury possession, industry award, or impressive revenue figure, was the true measure of my worth, the genuine legacy of my journey from underestimated daughter to architect of new possibilities. The path forward would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new horizons to explore, but I would meet them from a foundation of authentic purpose and genuine connection, carrying the knowledge that proving skeptics wrong is satisfying for a moment, but proving what's possible when you honor your authentic vision creates ripples of impact that extend far beyond any single moment of revelation or vindication. Sometimes the greatest success isn't what you build, but what you help others believe is possible. And sometimes, the journey that begins with seeking external validation ends with the profound discovery that the most meaningful validation comes from living in alignment with your deepest values, creating authentic excellence, and using your success to illuminate pathways for others. That understanding is worth more than any net worth could ever measure. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.